In this video, we're continuing on with transversals and different angles due to transversals. There are so many that I split it up into two videos. We're first going to look into the interior angles and the exterior angles of transversals. So as we are looking at this transversal on the right, we see that there are two different colors of transversal angles. So the interior angles of a transversal are the angles that are inside of the parallel lines. So what that means is they're kept inside of this little area. If we're looking at this little, if we're looking at these angles on the right, the angles that are interior, are inside, are going to be angles 3, angle 4, 5, and 6. So you can see that they're inside of those two parallel lines. They kind of house them in there. So those are the interior angles. The exterior angles are obviously the ones that are outside. They're not housed within the parallel lines. They are the angles that are on the outside edges of the transversal. So when we have those, we are talking about angles 1, 2, 7, and 8. Now these are going to be very important to us because they're going to help us find out angles sooner, so I can find out what angle 7 is based on what angle 2 is because of that exterior angle situation. So what I want to talk about first are these two examples. The first one says, a store owner uses pieces of tape to paint a window advertisement. The letters are slanted at an 80-degree angle. What is the measure of angle 1? So I need to find out that with the help of this 80 degrees, I need to figure out what angle 1 is going to be. All right, so I'm going to draw the transversal to help you guys out. So I have a line right here, and I have my two parallel lines over here. Okay, so these are actually interior angles because they're inside of my parallel lines. So if I wanted to talk about corresponding sides or angles, I have my grouping of 4 angles right there as well as right here. So the corresponding angle for 80 is going to be this top right side. So I know that this is 80 degrees. So if I know that my corresponding angle has been moved over right here, now these two angles, the angle 1 that I'm trying to find and this 80 degrees, create a supplementary angle pair. That means that they add up to 180 degrees. So to find that, I have my angle 1, which I don't know, plus my 80-degree angle. We know that it has to equal 180 degrees. So to find angle 1, I just have to move 80 degrees over by subtracting it. When I subtract it over, I get that the angle 1 measure is 100 degrees. So this also tells us something very interesting as well. If I have two interior angles that are inside next to each other, they both have to add up to equal 180 degrees. These two angles are supplementary to each other. So we know that when we're finding, they're called consecutive interior angles, they're on the same side, one after each other, they must add up to be 180 degrees. Now I'm going to try and help you guys with the next one. It's the same situation. We're given parallel lines and a transversal with a painting. So as you can see, they've drawn our lines for us, and you can tell, hey, they're interior angles. They're inside of this whole situation. So they're interior angles. If I wanted to solve with corresponding angles like I did before, the corresponding angle to this 120 degrees right there is down here for 120 degrees. Because I have my 4 angles up here, the 120 is the bottom right, and if I have 4 angles created right here, it's also the bottom right. It's the same seat at a different table. So angle 1 is supplementary to that. They create 180 degrees, and just like what we talked about, my 2 consecutive interior angles create 180 degrees. So I have angle 1 plus my 120 degree angle. We know it has to equal 180 degrees. So when I subtract 120 to both sides, when I solve it, I get that angle 1 is equal to 60 degrees. And that's my answer. So again, the consecutive part that I'm talking about is 120 and 1. These two angles have to equal 180 degrees, which they do. Now that we know the difference between interior angles and exterior angles, we're going to start talking about alternate interior angles and alternate exterior angles. So when we are having our transversal, okay, I'm going to start numbering these. We're going to draw these a lot. 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Alternate interior angles are the angles that make a large x, or a small x because they're interior. So the angles that are inside the parallel lines, because they are interior angles, inside the parallel lines, that make an X. The biggest thing we need to know with them is that they are always congruent. That means the same. So I have that written right there. And so what I'm talking about are these angles over here. I have angle 3, that's an interior angle, and the angle that makes it an X is just where we cross it. Alternate interior means you completely go the opposite way, so angle 6. So we have angles 3 and 6 are alternate interior angles. And then we have angle 4 and 5. Those two are alternate interior angles. So if angle 5 was 70 degrees, then angle 4 would also be 70 degrees because they're congruent to each other. They make a large X. The same goes for alternate exterior angles. So these are the angles that are outside of the parallel lines and that make an X. They make a large X, and they're also always congruent. So when we're talking about these, I'm going to change my colors so you can see them a little easier, but we have that angle 1, and angle 8 make a large X. They're on the other opposite side of the transversal. That means alternate. That's why we call it alternate exterior angles, and they're the exact same angle. So we have angle 1 and angle 8. And then you guys have probably figured out our 2 and our 7 are also, they're making a large X. They're exterior angles, but they are alternate exterior angles because of being on the opposite side of the transversal. So those two are also a pair of alternate exterior angles. If angle 2 was 150 degrees, angle 7 would be 150 degrees because they are congruent. So let's look at the bottom examples. The photo shows a portion of an airport. Describe the relationship between each pair of angles. We just have to say what they have in common. So we're talking about angle 3 and angle 6. So angle 3 and angle 6. So this is just kind of explaining what they are, which we just talked about. They're exterior angles, and then they're on the opposite side of a transversal. So they are alternate exterior angles. They make a large X, just like we did at the top with 1 and 8 for our examples. Now they want to know with angles 2 and 7. So we see that they're inside of the parallel lines and they're on the opposite side of the transversal. So because of that, they are alternate interior angles because they're on the inside of the parallel lines. Go ahead and try the next one on your own. Pause the video to see if you can do it on your own, and then come back and you'll see what the answers are. All right, guys, as you can see that we have our alternate interior and exterior angles labeled correctly. Just make sure that if they're an interior angle, the angles are inside of the two parallel lines.